2020 was a year to say the least. A global pandemic ravaging everything, unprecedented civil unrest. I think it's safe to say that it was a pretty good time to spend indoors playing video games, and luckily we got a lot of them. Now, we got a lot of good ones, but also a lot of bad ones. Also, some that are okay, and some that, just not for me, but maybe you guys would appreciate it more. And because of that, I'd like to dedicate an entire video series talking about them. Of course, as you can see from the title, starting off with the worst of the worst. At the very least, we could say that these games kept us indoors, safe from the virus and from spreading it to others. And I mean, it's really appreciated that these things even fucking came out this year. That in of itself is a miracle. I think nobody talks about that enough. Like, all these studios had to adapt immediately to a work from home environment, and we're still able to churn out these things. Games already came out, we're able to churn out updates. So I just want to start this whole series by saying thank you to all the developers who worked tirelessly. Not too tirelessly though, we'll get to you fucking bastards. Those leads, those managers, studio heads. Your time will come, don't worry. But for everyone, thank you. Thank you for all the work you did, even if it was shit work. And with that, let's start this series off on a bad note. Starting off with the very worst of 2020, we have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. Our first award of the night will be for Worst Remaster. Starting out as a GameCube game, you'd think this would be an easy and lazy cash grab at worst. All they had to do is make the game HD and add multiplayer support. Well, they managed to only get one of the two right. I don't think it was widely talked about, but the multiplayer for this game was region locked. When the fuck have you ever heard of a game with a major release being region locked? This means that if you own a North American copy, you can only play with people in North America. What the actual fuck, Square Enix? To make things worse, they added microtransactions to the game to make this more like a mobile game than a simple remaster. Though there were signs of this direction they wanted to take by announcing the free version of this game, which allows you to basically play a decent chunk of it, but then have to pay to play the rest. At first it seems cool until you realize it's just to entice people to then pay for microtransactions instead if they don't feel like buying the whole game. It's gross, unnecessary, and really could have been a better port if all they did was literally copy and paste the original game, graphics, and all. Fuck you, Square Enix. Up next we give Minecraft Dungeons the award for Most Pointless Game. First we got a Telltale spin-off of Minecraft, now we get a Diablo clone? Who asked for this? Why does it exist? Why is this so boring to play? The only reason it isn't the worst of the year is because at least it isn't insulting like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered was. It's like $20 and you can play it on every major platform along with crossplay enabled for all of them, so at least they got the multiplayer right and offer something that maybe someone out there would be interested in. I wish I had more to say, but all it is a Diablo clone with Minecraft skins, so I don't know what more there is to say. Hey, remember Rocket Arena? EA announced it in June, then released it a few weeks later for $30. Absolutely nobody bought it, so only weeks later dropped all the way down to $5. For this, it wins the award for Biggest Dud. It impacts so little on the world that even when it dropped down to $5, I struggled to find people to play online with. Plus, a 3v3 multiplayer only game where rockets are the only weapons to use really loses its appeal in a handful of matches. It becomes frustrating trying to line up shots with everyone bouncing around everywhere like it's Fortnite. Maybe I'm too old for these Twitch reflex shooters, but considering the player base for this one, I think even the Fortnite kids didn't bother to take a look either. The character designs show that they really wanted this to be another Apex Legends, but in the end all it is another Lawbreakers. Speaking of immediately forgotten hero shooters, who remembers Bleeding Edge? Yeah, neither did I. I actually had to go back in and add this one after finishing the script because I legitimately forgot it existed, let alone the fact that it came out in 2020. Because of this, I really can't explain why I don't like it since I remember absolutely nothing about it. For that I award it the "Wait, that came out this year?" award. Oh boy, this next one might rub some people the wrong way.
Cyberpunk 2077 is the latest and probably the biggest release of 2020, but it turned out to also be one of the very worst. Quick story, I actually had it pre-ordered for the PS4 since June because I got it $10 off, but once the gameplay leaked right before launch, I immediately cancelled that bitch. Stadia was then doing an offer where if you get Cyberpunk there, they give you the Stadia Pro bundle for free, which is like a over $100 value in of itself, so I was getting a fucking steal. CDPR hiding the quality of the last gen versions of this game should be considered criminal, but they avoid this label by avoiding false advertising. Can't false advertise if you never advertise the broken versions of your game. Enjoy the award for biggest scam, you fucking scumbags. So the console versions had it the worst, but the PC version had a myriad of problems as well. Where does that leave the Stadia version? Surprisingly solid, to be honest. I never had any major bugs, but enough of them were still around and to be expected for a launch of a major open world game. So even though I got technically the best running version of the game, what's the problem then? Well, the game itself. I find everything about it to be acceptable at best, broken at worst. The shooting's been done better in other games, the driving feels uncontrollable and way too sensitive, the writing is just bad a lot of the time. The polish is almost non-existent in its current state, and the list goes on. Just about every aspect of this game does nothing unique besides maybe the music and the world itself. Dear God, the music is incredible. The soundtrack is pretty good, but the score is what's remarkable here, fitting in different genres and fusing them together to make some of the most interesting compositions I've heard in gaming. We got ourselves a new Spotify drop I'll be highly anticipating. That's probably the only genuine positive I can say about the game. While nice to look at, there's just not that much exciting stuff to do. There may be lots of small details, but the bigger picture overall is sorely lacking. Misspelling Night City, anyone? Like The Witcher 3, this game lives and dies off of its side quests. They're not that memorable here, unfortunately. You can be a cop bastard and deal with thugs and get paid by the police for it, do more crimes, or once in a while do some lengthy missions for some characters you meet throughout the story. Now these are actually kinda good, depending on some of the characters that you're doing these missions for, but once again, everything's limited. There's only a handful of them at most that you can romance, so your options are super limited even in how you spend your time outside of the main missions. How very #Cyberpunk. I look to the Deus Ex franchise to be the golden standard for what an action RPG set in a cyberpunk setting should be like. You get so many ways to play that game, all being just as valid as the next. In Cyberpunk, you can only really shoot or talk your way out of things. For example, there's a mission where I have to go talk to the owner of a sex robot place. The game tells me go upstairs, and so I do while passing what looks to be like a guard talking to some guy trying to go somewhere. Turns out, he was guarding the stairs I'm going up, and he was preventing the guy from going up, so now I have to deal with the whole ass shootout. I get to the office of the guy I have to find, but now I am forced to kill him since my actions have led to violence. I take out my fists to ensure that I don't kill him, but later on in the story, I learn through dialogue that my iron fists managed to kill him. So even when I try to course correct my mistakes, the game only leaves me with binary options in the end. Another huge problem with the game is how it handles dialogue. You are often presented with multiple options to choose from, but almost every time the game wants you to choose them all in order to progress the conversation. Each option can also tend to be tonally different from one another, so there's never a natural flow to any of the conversations. At the very least, Fallout 4 had the decency to stick to your dialogue choice, and each had a different tone and effect to it, and that game's dialogue system was garbo. Almost every key aspect of this game feels so restrictive in what you can do with this world, and it's a shame. I thought I would have to build my way up to becoming the ultimate cyberpunk, but no. All you get is a main story that's disappointingly short and some mediocre side quests to go with it. After 8 years of waiting for the next coming of Christ, you'd think the end results would be a little better than this. On that note, we will now go to the award for winner of most wasted potential, Predator Hunting Grounds. Only having 4 maps that are basically the same, 2 modes and 5 classes each having only a handful of unique weapons, this is a super small game that still dared to launch with a $40 price tag. Only reason I don't award it for biggest scam of the year is because I got it for $10 and it is actually kinda really enjoyable, especially at that price. The AI is brain dead, but it is enjoyable enough to run around jungles covering yourself up in mud and going Arnold on some baddies. The always looming fear of being picked off by a predator keeps you on your toes and looking up at the trees, and I think it's in these moments that the game almost lives up to its potential. I honestly think with tons more polish and content, this could have been a good game, but as is, maybe get it when it's $10 at max, and I don't think you'd regret it. It's a bad game still, don't get me wrong, but it's one of those that you can play while listening to a podcast or something and not have the worst time with. Speaking of bad times, just as controversial as Cyberpunk, we have The Last of Us Part 2. I made a drunk rambling talking about why I don't like this game, but the quick rundown is that I am a huge fan of the first one. I consider it to be one of the all-time greats. This was a game I was very much looking forward to until the leaks came out. Killing that one character off in the beginning was, in my opinion, a terrible idea and didn't really come off as anything more than shock value, or hell, almost a reversed case of fridging. Once I got to play the whole game, my impressions were correct. The death was only done to get the plot going, but then the game basically forgets about it and starts saying fuck it and kills everyone else that gets near the main characters. It's dumb, drags on way too long, and I did not like any of the characters in it. The only redeeming qualities are the incredible accessibility options, the flashback scenes with Joel and Ellie, and the last combat sequences in the campaign. Everything turns to the Phantom Pain, and it might be the most beautiful climax of game mechanics I've ever seen be pulled off in a final level. Other than that, all you get is a game that's frustrating to play because the more realistic designs of the levels makes it confusing to know exactly where you're supposed to go. The story doesn't help either, as I hated just about every character, so I never cared about what happened to anyone. This game must atone for its sins, and until then shall be awarded biggest letdown. If you want a good cycle of violence story, watch fucking Spies in Disguise. I swear to God, it gets its point across better in 1/10 of the runtime.
So that concludes part 1 of our video series so far, and if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like and comment below. Maybe why don't you share with the rest of the class what your least favorite games of 2020 are, because I would love to know. There's a lot that I didn't play, like 13, that remake, Warcraft 3 Reforged apparently was a thing in 2020. So there's a lot of things I missed, and I just want to hear all the bad experiences gaming brought you guys, because I think that'd be a little fun. So I'll see you guys next time. Meanwhile, I think I'm gonna take a break, sit here for a while.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.